After we got back from Europe, the company sent me to South America. I first went down to Chile, clear to the south end, and my work was all on the island of Tierra del Fuego, and there was nobody living there, so we had to build our own camp. So we took, our company had a whole boatload full of equipment, the trucks, the buildings, everything. There was no other way to do it. So we occupied a whole small freighter getting there. It was kind of interesting. The geophysics was the same as any place else. It's always the same the world over. Well, it's the same type of thing. But Tierra del Fuego was quite interesting. It was mostly just barren land, practically no trees. But there was a lot of life there anyway. As a matter of fact, there were ostriches, flamingos, guanaco, should I say llama? No, even that. Llama, in Spanish, llama, with the double L. So I frequently went out in the field, even though it wasn't necessary, but it's good in geophysics to take a look at the lay of the land. And when you get done with your prospecting, you find that it looks just like the land on top, something's wrong. you gotta work it over again then. Everything was pretty normal. Oh, we didn't have to go very deep in drilling for the shot holes. So we had just little tractor-mounted really drills.
And what did they do? What were you doing?
What was I doing?
Yeah, the geophysicist. You said it's the same as everywhere, but we don't know what you did.
What I did, I sat in the office, and the other guys went out in the field and took observations seismically. They brought them into me, and I had to look them over and make some sense out of it and try to figure out what the geology was underground.
It looks like
it's a bunch of squiggles.
like an EKG chart with wiggly lines.
You don't remember that? Yeah, okay. Anyway, we did pretty good, but I played tourist as much as I could, and went up to see the famous Straits of Magellan, and went down to an island on the way to the South Pole that was inhabited only by penguins. Can't remember the name of the island. Went to an old fort that looked like it came straight out of a John Wayne Western, but it was really guarding the Straits of Magellan. And the town there was, the only town of any size at all was Punta Arenas, and it was on the mainland, so if I wanted to go to town, I had to take an airplane. An old DC-3 usually, and there were a couple old crummy hotels where we stayed, and there was an English club because the English were fairly dominant there. They owned all the sheep, they owned this, they owned that, and so on. They definitely were taking advantage. Anyway, tourism was just beginning to build up in South America, and so in Punta Arenas they were building 2 new nice hotels, but I didn't get to stay in either one. I had to stay in a crappy little building when I was in town. Couldn't even stay at the English club. English club, they had a silly card game with betting on a small scale, and I never did figure it out, but I was playing with them just for fun. I was lost, but it was something to do while I was waiting for the airplane. I didn't stay down there too long. It was kind of discouraging. Our initial results seemed to show that all the oil was probably over on the Argentinian side of the island. In Chile, they didn't have any. Well, they had a little. But we weren't getting anywhere. So then the company moved me up to Brazil. And that was considerably more interesting. Again, though, the geophysics is just like every other place. You go out, you shoot some shots, get the reflections back from down below, and then it was my job to figure out if they meant anything. But as usual, I played the tourist as much as I could. On the way out to our camp from, where were we staying then? Salvador, Bahia was the town, but our camp was out closer to where we were working. And on the way out there were a couple of old oil wells that they drilled, but they were mostly gas, and they were too far from town. When you got gas too far from town, you burn it, throw it away. There's nothing else you can do. Same thing in the Sahara. You flared it, there's the right word. I always knew when I passed the little village of mud huts that I was on the right road to get to my camp, because there were no signs. We were out in the country. That was funny though. This little village, if you want to call it that, was a landmark for me. Since we were out there all by ourselves, it didn't matter what we wore. I first grew my beard down there, and everybody went around sloppily wearing not many clothes at all. We had to sleep with mosquito nets, because there was one kind of bug that if you got bit, you died. And so there was one guy who was a native that was helping me, and he'd reach down every time I saw a bug and flip it over. So if it had a certain pattern on the bottom, he knew that it was a bad one, or if it didn't have that pattern, it didn't matter. But he was our bug flipper. Anyway, at night, you better tuck in the mosquito netting all around you pretty tight, or you might get bit. Our dining room even was outside. We didn't have any rooms hardly that were closed up. What for? It's warm all the time. And the food was excellent, however. We had a native who baked bread in an oven that you wouldn't believe. He built the fire in the oven, scrape it out, and while it's still hot, put in your bread and let it bake. Well, he never got it scraped out completely clean. So when we had our bread, there's once in a while there was a little speck of ash in it. Didn't matter though, because it was good. Yeah, we had a shower, but it was kind of rickety. Oh, another funny thing. Down there, the ants were very prolific, and they built ant hills that were 2 and 3 feet high. Don't know where they came from or where they went, but you could sure spot them a mile away. Oh, there's a bunch of ants living over there. Getting touring around, they did grow a lot of sugar cane there too, and as we do here in Florida. But the means of picking it up was a little different. They had guys that cut it with a machete, and then they picked it up in an ox cart and brought it to the factory. Factory being controlled by England, of course. There was another town or two close by, 2 of them we went to. One of them was quite modern and had a nice market. That's where I bought the Portuguese stirrups. Yeah. What else did I bring back from there? Don't remember. Nothing, I guess. Aside from the permanent things, it was mainly a cattle market. And then once a week they had a general market where everybody brought in whatever they had raised and sold it. In the other town, we were in our Jeep, and it was a fairly large for a village, and there were no cars, 0. We were the only car in town. Everybody else was on horseback. Now, I understand this was, what, 62? So We've had 40 years since then, but I'll bet it's just about the same. It's funny to go into town with only horses.